Now in its 10th year, this is Gabnet. Talk like you've never heard it before.
Live from Harlem in New York City, it's me. I'm Alex, and this is the Ramble. Ladies and gentlemen, out to San Francisco, California we go. And of course, you know, we're talking to Larry Bubbles Brown. Hi, Larry.
Yes, Alex, you got to get back out here.
Yeah, I know you keep saying that, but, you know, it's hard to get me out of the house, okay?
I know the feeling, but...
Yeah. And I would love to get out there, and I would love to do a little something. You were suggesting doing something at the Throckmorton Theater.
Yeah, the Throckmorton would love to have you do a reunion show with you and Lori and me and a couple of your comics.
Yeah, well, that would be nice. Lori, it depends if Lori wants to go out to California, you know. It's a large trip, and I have to have more than one reason to go out there, you know. But my reason for going out there is, hey, how many years do I have left? I'd like to get back to California at least once. You know? So it's not good. So
yeah, and didn't you spent some of your time growing up in Mill Valley, right?
I grew up. I spent a couple of years. I think maybe 1 year in Mill Valley. My parents had my grandparents died. And my father inherited their home in Mill Valley. And so we had a home in Mill Valley, but they didn't like it because it was small. It was a kind of a weird house. And he really just wanted to sell it. And he had a lot of property up the hill. And the whole thing was about an acre, which even in those days was a lot of property. And consequently... he sold it because he wanted it, and they used that money to pay for the house or pay partially for the house in San Anselmo. And that's pretty much where I grew up in my teens. As a kid, I grew up in North Beach, in San Francisco, which is not a beach, by the way. I don't even know if you can.
It's not north, and it's not a beach.
It's not a beach, and I don't know if you can see a beach from there.
No.
All right, so why do they call it North Beach?
Exactly.
I mean, wouldn't you think they would name someplace North Beach because it's the beach that's north? I know that if you go up the hill, then down the hill, then you're in the bay. Okay. So maybe, that is kind of a North Beach. If you want to call that whole area North Beach, it would be. Anyway, I grew up
you won't see any sand. Well, who else lived in Mill Valley for 1 year?
Who else lived in... Now you're asking me trivia questions that are so remote. Who lived in Mill Valley for 1 year? I don't know. Robin Williams?
Very famous. You once interviewed him.
I once interviewed him. Huh. Oh, no. I thought it might be Robin Williams, but it wasn't, huh?
No.
And it wasn't Dana Carvey.
No. Although Dana still has a house there.
Yeah. But Dana lives in Mill Valley now?
He lives in L.A., but he's kept the house here.
He kept the house here, yeah. I don't know. Who?
John Lennon.
What? John Lennon lived in Mill Valley?
Came out for a year there.
That I don't remember, because when he came out to California, I thought he was in L.A.,
we went to L.A. from Mill Valley, but he tried Mill Valley for a year and must have been bored to death. But
yeah, well, I mean, he came out here by himself without Yoko. Yoko threw him out of the house here, out of the Dakota, and he wanted to go to the West Coast to be with Harry Nilsson because they were drinking buddies. All right. And he had there was this woman that worked for the Lennons, for Yoko, Lenono, as sometimes they call themselves, and her name was May Pang. I knew May quite well, and she sent May out with John with the explicit instructions that she was to have sex with him and have a relationship with him, because she felt that if May was doing it, it would be better than if it was some strangers.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. So he and May Pang, for about a year out in California, had this affair, this relationship. And then he decided to be a good boy and went back home and went to the Dakota and hung out there. And that was his big mistake, because then he got shot. So, you know.
He hit right in front, right?
Right in front of the Dakota. You know, but
that's supposed to be. Isn't that supposed to be an incredible building for some reason?
Do you remember Rosemary's Baby?
I never saw it.
Oh, well, that was the building in Rosemary's Baby.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an old. It's one of the oldest, what we call apartment houses in New York. It's older than the one I'm in. Mine actually is pretty much like second or third after the Dakota. And what they were meant to be, they were a new idea. Rather than have a mansion, they would have mansions on top of each other. So a lot of times the whole floor was taken up by one family.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little different now, but that's a really old building, and it's still there, and it is a landmark in New York City.
So he was 40 when he was shot, and now he's been dead. So he's been dead longer than he was alive.
Wow. That was kind of.
I remember
sad.
it was. I heard about that. They came in on announced it on Monday Night Football.
I had a problem. I was very big into. I knew John and I knew Yoko, and I then moved out to California. I came to Camel, KMEL, and at the behest of a friend of mine who was helping to program the station. And I came out, and I did a week, and they hired me after a week. And let me put it this way: on Monday, I went on. They went, "What the fuck is this all about?" Tuesday, they went, "Is he getting better?" By Wednesday, they went, "He's not bad." By Friday, they said, "How much you want?" And
wow.
I got the job. Okay, so I moved out to California. That made me move out to California. So now I'm working out in California, and I'm very depressed. I want to go back to New York. I just, I don't know why I was depressed. My wife was still living. Ronnie was still living Susan was still living in New York, and getting ready to come out. And I decided I didn't want to stay. So I walk into the boss and go, "Boss, look, I love this station. I've had a good time here, but I just am so homesick for New York, I got to go back." And he said, "Well, if you got to go back, you got to go back. We'd love to have you stay. Is there anything that could make you stay?" And I said, "Not really." So I walk out of his office and I go home, and a couple of days pass, and John Lennon gets shot. And I say to myself, I can't go back to New York, because now what it represents to me is death. And
wow.
It so affected me that I walked into the boss's office again, and I said, "Boss, can I take back leaving, quitting?" I said, "Because this whole Lennon thing has got me so down that I don't know if I want to go back to New York." And he said, "Fine. By the way, here's another $25,000 a year." Okay?
Wow.
So I stayed. And that was the thing that made me determined to stay in San Francisco was the death of John Lennon. So I thank John for getting shot, for giving me a very good career, because my career got really good in San Francisco.
That's a great story.
Yeah. So that was my brush with death. It depressed me a great deal. I'll tell you what happened at the station. I love telling this story because this is the way stations think. They think, oh, John Lennon died. How can we promote this? So they decided they had this big giant the station was KMEL. It was called the Camel. And they had this big giant inflatable camel, a balloon. They take it out someplace, they blow it up, and it would sit there. And it was a good-looking thing. And the camel in the logo was designed by my cousin's husband, Victor Moscoso. And they actually had a representation of this thing as a giant balloon. So I'm walking past the office, and they're all discussing they decided they were going to have a memorial for John Lennon out on the Marina Green. Okay? You know where that is. It's near you.
Yeah.
And I'm walking by, and they're discussing it, and all of a sudden I hear out the side of my ear, so where should we put the camel? And I walked in, I said, I just couldn't help but hear what you were saying, and I'm sorry, but a man, a very famous man, a very beloved man, has died, and he's dead, and you're trying to discuss where to inflate the camel at a memorial for this man? I said, I know you want to promote the station, but that's all wrong. And they said, well, we got to put it up so somebody knows who's doing it. I went, this is the kind of thing where you don't care whether anybody knows who's doing it. And they went, well, I said, look, I got a suggestion. At least if you're going to inflate the camel, just half inflate him so his head is bowed. And I walked out. They did inflate the camel on the green. They did it, and I didn't show up for the memorial. Just couldn't bring myself to. So that was the history of John Lennon's death and where I was at the time. And so when was that?
December 8th, 1980.
1980. Wow. Yep, that would be just right. I just had gotten there in 1980. Oh, jeez.
I had just started hanging out at watching comics at that time, and I remember all the comics were so depressed about Lennon being killed.
Yeah. Oh, well, of course you'd be depressed about it. You know what was depressing about it? I'll tell you why people were so depressed by it. Because it suddenly represented something it had never represented before. It was the end of time. It was literally a period on a certain era. Because you knew that no matter what happened, the Beatles were never getting back together.
Yeah.
And the whole thing was people going, you think the Beatles will ever get back together? Will they get back together? Always rumors. They're getting back together. And I when that happened, I just said everybody realized the reason they were really depressed, they lost John Lennon, but also they lost their innocence. They lost their childhood. They lost their youth. Now it was time to go on and become an adult. Does that make sense?
Yeah. End of an era.
How did you feel? I mean, how did you react to it?
I just remember it was really sad, and but some people were. I remember people were crying, and there were, I think, memorials in every city. I think. So you're popular when that happens.
Yeah, but also, what were they crying? They were crying over the loss of their innocence.
Right. Yeah.
Because the Beatles were an intrinsic part of our lives up to that point. Every album that came out, we listened to with earphones 20 times the first day we got it. In those days, they were LPs, so they wore out pretty fast. But it was quite a change in time. I mean, there have been deaths of other musicians, but I don't think anyone impacted everybody that way. So
if Lennon had not been killed, you would never have come back here.
I would have not stayed. I did come back, but I had a job, but I didn't stay. And I can't remember when I first got the job, but it was just like a month earlier, so, you know. But
where was their station? Because I remember they were huge.
They were on down Pier 39.
Oh, wow.
We weren't on the pier. We were across from Pier 39. You could see the pier out the studio window.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was probably the biggest station in San Francisco then.
We weren't number one because KGO always was number one at that point. But as far as music stations went and entertainment-based stations went, yes, we were indisputably number one. They weren't number one before I got there. They were close to number one, but they weren't necessarily number one. And then I grabbed the mornings and got really good numbers, and that station was the number one station, non-news station in San Francisco.
And did you start having comics on right away?
No, I didn't know what I was going to do. You know, everything I've ever done in this business, I've never done by design. I've let it just happen. You know, I kind of believed in organic broadcasting, you know. So one day, and I'm trying to remember who it was. I think it was Gonzo. I think it was Dr. Gonzo. Came on the show. Was it Gonzo or was it Slayton? I think Gonzo had done it. I'm trying to remember. It's hard for me to remember. But all I know is that Slayton started coming on the show. And I had him on because he was funny. He wanted to be on because he was a fan of mine in New York. Okay. Used to call into my show in New York. I didn't remember him, but he called into New York. I used to do this trivia thing, and there were this group of kids called the Yonkers Zappers or something. They gave themselves some kind of name. And he was one of them. And they would people would call me up and try and beat me at trivia. And I was pretty good at it. That's when I got really good at it. And he was one of those kids that called up at later years. He came on. He said, I'm a comedian. I'd like to be on your show. He said, I've always wanted to be on your show because I was a fan of yours in New York. And we kind of became friends. And he did the show. And I said, well, do you know any other comics that might want to do the show? Next thing I knew, I was up to my ass in comics. You know, Jeremy Kramer came by, and Dr. Gonzo was on the show, and Kevin Pollak was on the show.
Kevin Meaney?
Kevin Meaney was on the show. I mean, we could go on and on and on. All of a sudden, I had this show that nobody else was doing, a show where comics would come on in the morning. And up until that time, there was no show doing that. Nobody ever said, hey, you know, we could mine this whole comic thing and, you know, have these people on. But I didn't do that. And I did that, rather. And the show developed, and it became a show with comedians. So that's the history of how that show came to be.
That's good. I know. Yeah, that was before I was just hanging out. I hadn't heard you. I hadn't.
Were you on the Camel show in the morning? No, I don't think
I never did that. No, I didn't.
You came over when I did the Quake, I believe.
The first time I did your show was January of '83.
So that would be the Quake.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was at the Quake.
On Sutter Street.
Yeah. I was at the Quake until, 84, 85?
85, and then they kind of went, I think they went under, right? And then...
Well, no, what they did is some guys came in and they decided they knew better. They knew how to do a better station. So part of the problem was they wanted me to suddenly play more music. They didn't want all this comedy in the morning and stuff. And I went, you can't do that. I said, why? I said, look at my contract. It says I have complete creative control over my program. And they looked at the contract, and sure enough, there it was. I have complete creative control over the program. I said, I'm going to do the show the way I want to do the show. And if you don't want me, then let me go and pay me for that. So they let me go, and they started paying me, and I was making, I think at that point, $125,000, $150,000 a year, something like that.
A lot of money then.
Yeah. And so I was out of work for, I don't know, a while. I don't know how long, quite a few months, when all of a sudden this guy came along from Live 105 named Ed Cramp, and he came up with this he was a fan of football. So he came up with a football trade solution. He wanted me. And I couldn't go there because I was under contract to the other station, and I was getting this money, like $125,000, $150,000 a year, for just not working. And so he went to them and said, look, I will take him off your hands for, what was it? He said, I'll pay 60% of his salary, you pay the other 40%. And if he gets the same ratings or better than the rating he got at the Quake, you're off the hook. And they said, no way, you pay us the 40% no matter what. Or we'll pay you the 40% no matter what. We don't think he's going to get those ratings again.
Wow.
First book that came out, I beat those ratings. And those guys had to keep paying 40% of my salary for about a year and a half.
That's amazing. Wow. That's sweet revenge.
Yeah, that was very sweet revenge. So anyway, that was how I wound up at the Live 105.
Live 105.
Yeah, and I'll tell you a story about Live 105. Okay. Live 105, folks, so you've seen the building before. You've watched television. You've seen them do stories about Elon Musk and Twitter and X and all of that. And they show a building. And that building used to be called the Furniture Mart. And on the bottom floor, they had an area that was the studios for Live 105. And I got to tell you, I walked in. We said, okay, we'll do the deal, because we did all the dealings out of hotel rooms and things like that. It had to be kept a big secret and whatever. So one day I finally go down to see the studios. Do you remember those studios in the Furniture Mart?
Very tiny.
Tiny and dilapidated, and I walked in and I went, what the hell is going on here? I immediately called my business manager, Gary. I said, get me out of this. I don't want to work here. This place is a dump.
Yeah.
And he said, if I were you, I'd do it. I said, okay, I'll make the best of a bad thing. And we went in and started using those studios, and they were horrible. They were I had a live studio audience, and most of them had to sit outside the studio. It was just horrible. And but I did the show out of there, and it got very, very popular, and the station made lots and lots of money. And eventually, I don't know if it was while I was out of work there, but they moved to bigger and better digs. And while I was still there, they moved to another building because they were making enough money to do it, and they built a studio for me that literally had room for a live studio audience. We had seats in the studio, and then we had seats outside the studio, but we had a big window that opened up, so it then became like one big studio. And but while I was there, it was just it was a real adventure. It was a real adventure, and a strange little place to do a show from. But, sometimes when you're working at a deficit, it sometimes makes you work better. It makes you more inventive because you have to be more inventive with your surroundings.
I remember it was cramped, but it was fun, though.
It was fun. It was fun. That was it, basically. Gee, I'm looking. We got about a minute left here. We went by so fast. Of course, when I'm talking about myself, I
You know,
get.
I didn't know much about your history at Camel, so that was very interesting for me.
Yeah, well, KML was a good station, but I
There
felt
was. It was huge.
I felt bad about leaving them, but the money was so good. It was about another $50,000 a year. That yeah, I could be bought off. You know, why not? I'm in business for myself, so I had to leave, and I felt bad about that. But you know, you get the first paycheck, you stop feeling bad.
Exactly.
Anyway, hey, thanks, Bubs. You're going to do this
Thank
again?
you.
I hope you can do this with me next week. I guess
We
you
will.
can. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our good friend Larry Bubbles Brown.
Now in its 10th year, this is GabNet. Talk like you've never heard it before.
Well, hello there, everybody. Wait a minute. Let me just get my audio up here. Wait a minute. Where are we? There we go. There's where we want to be. Okay, good. Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. How are you? Are you okay? Are you all right? Did you have a nice night off from me? We took last night off because it was a big night at the Democratic Convention, and I didn't figure we'd have a hell of a lot of people here. And if we did have them here, they would be too, we just decided it wasn't a night to do it, and it was a better night that, you watch the convention and see the speeches and see the balloon drop, and things like that, and enjoy yourself. But meanwhile, we got some people waiting here to come on, and we'll put them on, and then if anybody else wants to join us, they certainly can. Let me just do this. There's, let's see here. There's Charlie Wallace, and there's Josh Wheeler, and there's Brian Neary. He still has to connect his audio. Anyway, it looks like he's outside, though. That's where it looks like he's. Oh, well, wait a minute. There she is. Oh, hey, it's Adrian. Hey, Adrian. Oh, yeah, push the kid out of the way. Yeah, why don't you? Jeez,
I thought the volume would go on, but it didn't because then it says, "Oh, do you want your volume on?"
Oh, I see. Okay, that's the same room you're always doing it from now. Okay, good. Yeah, you should move your camera up there a little bit. Yeah. You'll look the opposite of Jeff, so do that. Hello, Jeff. How are you? And hello to Adrian once again. Poke your head in there, Adrian. Go ahead. We don't mind seeing you. What is that? Oh, you know something? We have one sitting in our refrigerator. Watermelon. Oh, no. Oh, that isn't watermelon. It's something else. What?
No, it is watermelon.
It is watermelon.
I don't know how you cut your watermelon. Oh my God, my thing's.
That's too much work.
To do it that way?
Yeah.
Yeah, if we just slice it, and then eat it and then scoop it out.
Oh, we cut it in half. Oh man, I see my Wi-Fi needs to catch up. We cut it in half and then slices across this way, and then you pull it out. See?
Okay, I'll give that a try sometime. But you get the big full watermelon, right? We get the pre-sliced watermelon. Oh, is that a smaller watermelon that you're using?
Yeah.
I'd eat that whole watermelon in one sitting.
Really? Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yes. I did the other night.
Yeah. Anyway, I guess you were waiting for your Wi-Fi to catch up to you or something. Yeah. Does it take a while after you turn it on for it to kind of get going and get juice, as it were?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I'm a little out of sync tonight. Am I out of sync to you people?
Not on
No,
Zoom.
I'm not out of sync. Okay, fine. Well, here we are, folks. The day after I took the night off last night, and I think it was the right thing to do. Because I would probably not have very many people here, but then again, I don't have very many people here now. But I wouldn't have very many people last night, and I probably would have had less during last night's convention. Quite an evening, actually.
Yeah.
Let's ask everybody. First, Charlie, what was your favorite part of the evening?
Well, of course, I was umpiring until 11 o'clock, so I did get on in time to see Kamala's, or maybe I was seeing a replay of it. But anyway, I saw Kamala's speech, and then went back and saw Elizabeth Warren and a bunch of other people, and so
Yeah.
Kamala's was my favorite, of course.
Yeah. My favorite part of the evening were the two kids telling people how to pronounce her name. I just thought that was, I thought that was adorable, you know. Josh, what was your favorite part of the evening, or did you watch it?
Yeah, I watched. Favorite part? Yeah, they did a good job last night. Eva Longoria is usually my favorite part. You know,
Yeah.
nice thing about every 4 years is we have a Democratic convention and they invite Eva Longoria, so that's fine with me.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
too.
Okay. Brian, did you watch it at all last night? Yes, I did. I enjoyed it, and it was really good. Yep.
Let's see if my Wi-Fi is caught up. Okay.
No, it hasn't really.
Yes, watched it. Yeah, I thought it was very, very good.
What was
I
your?
like seeing the Republicans up there speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was good. That was really good.
That was pretty funny. Yeah. No, it's very, very good. I think a lot of energy in the crowds, you know. So
A lot of joy, basically. Yep. That's the way to describe it. How about you, Jeff? What was the favorite part of the evening for you?
The one thing that I didn't expect, and then there was Sharpman. What's his name? The black guy, Sharpie.
Oh, Sharpton. Oh,
Sharpton.
yeah.
Did you hear him? His presentation at the beginning was his typical stuff, as what he would say, with kind of like anybody else there. Maybe his own spin. But then he brings up these 5 guys.
4. 4, was it 5? Is it 5 or 4 that was in that group? It was the Central Park 4, I think, wasn't it?
No, that's 5.
Was it 5? 5? Okay, yeah.
That's 5.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about. Yeah.
And of course, for anybody who doesn't know, these guys were sent to prison for something that they had nothing to do with it. But they said
at the time, nobody would listen to them.
No, and I can't remember how many years.
They spent about 15 years, I think, in prison.
Some crazy thing like that. And finally.
By the way, they collected a lot of money.
Yeah.
After
good
that.
for them.
Yeah.
So they finally got out.
Yeah, but.
And they were there, and.
But we're telling the reason why they were there. They weren't there just because they, were innocent of something and spent 15 years in prison. They were there for another reason altogether. That at the time of the Central Park rape or whatever, and the Central Park 5, or was it more than that? I'm trying to think. 7 seems to.
I've always heard 5.
You've heard 5. Okay.
5 also.
Anyway,
Really wrong.
the Central Park 5. Donald Trump took out a full-page ad in the newspaper. Can't remember which newspaper. I think it might have been the New York Times, saying that these guys should be given the death penalty.
The death penalty.
Yes. That's right.
And they basically said, if Donald Trump had had his way, we'd be dead now, and innocent.
Yep.
And so that's why they were there last night, and I think it was very important for them to be there,
And also the tallest guy, who also spoke very nicely, happens to live and work in Harlem, New York.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. But he also does something very important too. He's got a big job. I can't remember what he does exactly, but he became a big person in the community.
Yeah.
In fact, I think he ran for political office, if I'm not mistaken.
I didn't know that, but
Yeah. But this was a case in which some woman was walking through Central Park or jogging through Central Park, and she was raped. And she claimed it was these guys. And it turns out it wasn't. You know, her memory was a little wrong. And but when that came out, Trump took out this full-page ad saying we should reinstitute the death penalty in order to put these guys away. You know.
Yeah, I mean, they should have just sent, Briscoe and Green down there. They would have figured it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's wrong with those? I mean, the detectives from Law and Order would have been right on it, man.
Yes.
I was when they were exonerated, Trump still said they should have been put to death because they probably committed some other crime.
Yeah.
Did he say that? Really?
Yes, he did.
I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
I was listening. I
Well,
was
say that-
listening
what-
to
what-
the
oh, go
other.
ahead.
No. Yes. What?
I
Go ahead,
was
Brian.
listening to other speakers. Yeah, I was just listening to other speakers as I was driving home before I watched it on TV, and those the mothers from Sandy Hook and from Uvalde, and those were speaking, and the lady from Uvalde had me almost bawling in the car. It was like, hear their stories and stuff like that. It's just,
It was a night full of very high moments,
Yeah.
And then her speech was as good a political speech as I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And you've heard a lot of them, right, Josh?
Yeah, I've heard a lot.
Can you remember any as good as that?
Well, I mean, she did really, really well. I mean, as far as convention speeches, I mean, it was great. I really liked Bill Clinton's acceptance speech in 1992.
Mm-hmm.
Because I thought what he did was he brought about a sea change of the way people, voted. I mean, he got people like my parents, who had been Reagan, people and things like that, to sit around and say, oh, here's a guy from the Democratic Party talking about the economy and family values and all this other, so I thought that was very important. And she sort of hit on some of that last night too. And I thought that their theme about the patriotism and all that, I thought a lot of that harkened back to 1992, because in 92, from my memory, and then I've seen a speech since then, and just a couple weeks ago and stuff like that. I thought there was a lot of stuff in there that when I watched it, I'm like, gosh, if a Democrat would just keep talking this way today, they would have more success, and it seems like they've slowly gotten back to it, which is great. I think that, she's been working back toward that. So his was very good. Hers was very good. I mean, I watched the speech. I didn't see anything wrong with it at all. I mean, her delivery was very good, but I thought the substance of it was very good. I mean, for people who want to talk about like policies and all, I mean, like Trump lays out policy or whatever. I mean, let's be real. Elections are about whatever they're about at that time. And this election is not about policy from the Republicans, and it is not about policy from the Democrats. That doesn't mean the leaders don't have policies and different things that we need to work on. But the fact of the matter is, this election is about who the fork in the road and the direction that the country goes next based on who's at the top. That's what the election is. I mean, the election is not really about, I mean, if she has 5 policies she comes out tomorrow that I disagree with, so be it. Because Donald Trump has no policies that I agree with, and he's a danger to society. So, I mean, it changes nothing for me, If she does a 60 Minutes interview tomorrow and shits herself while she does it, makes no difference to me. I mean, I don't care. I mean, it doesn't make any difference. So, for that matter, the speech was very good because she laid out that there is an option for a new way forward for all of the people who are sick and tired of Trump and of the nonsense that he brought. I think they've been doing a good job messaging that.
Yeah. Now, how do you think? I know you see here we have a what's the kind of thing where you have a kind of a sad feeling the day afterwards because it was just so giddy and wonderful the day before.
You have a letdown. Yeah.
kind of a letdown. How do you think now, looking realistically at the future, do you think Kamala's going to do?
I think if they keep on the track that they're on, I think that they're going to have a very good chance of winning. You know, now what bothers me, and you know, this is what works against them. What's working against them is the media's love for Trump. Now he can talk about how they don't, but see what bothers me today is she goes to the convention last night, and I get that they got covered for 4 days. I get it, but every convention gets covered for 4 days.
Right.
Okay, she goes to the convention last night. This is a huge election. Everything's on the line. All the media is running around to tell you it's on all that. So what does the nightly news on NBC lead with tonight? Oh, that RFK Jr. is going to drop out of the race and support Trump. And I flip over to CBS Nightly News at 6:30, and they didn't lead with it. They waited about 90 seconds, and then they were on it. I mean, really? That's the biggest story in America today is that RFK Jr., a fucking guy that if you met him on the street, you would, when you walked away from talking to him, you'd be like, Jesus Christ. Fucking, if we ever run into that fucking guy again, like make something up that we got to go do, you know, he's a fucking crackhead and I don't want to talk to him. I mean, really? That's the lead fucking story that he's going to drop out and support. I mean, so it's like, now, no wonder they timed it that way because the media fell for it, you know, and then they go on stage together in this awkward little weird deal that I watched on C-SPAN. And oh, he's just so smart. And like, what the fuck is wrong with these two people? I mean, it makes no sense. But that's what the media talked about for 6 hours today. I mean, I don't understand why they think that's the biggest story in America, because it's not. A guy that
it's not a big story because number one, he only had less than 5%.
Right.
In the polls.
I mean, I'm not saying it's not a story, okay? You understand what I'm saying there? I'm not saying it's not a story. And I'm saying that when you scroll down 3 or 4 inches on the Washington Post, there it is. That's fine. But to lead off the 6:30 nightly news on at least 2 or the 3 networks, because I could only flip around to 2 of them real quick to see what they were doing. Because when NBC came on, I was like, you got to be fucking kidding me. That's what Lester Holt's leading with tonight. And I flip over to CBS, you know, 45 seconds into that, and they're on it. So it's been 90 seconds since 6:30. And I say to myself, I can't believe that Nora O'Donnell or Lester Holt, who are supposed to be respected journalists and control the nightly news, couldn't look at somebody and say, if you think I'm fucking reading this script at 6:30, fuck you. You can find someone else to read it. How's that? You know? And it's 6:29, so you better make your fucking mind up right now. You can either show a blank chair at 6:30 or I'm not reading this. And if you think I won't do it, I got millions of dollars. You can shove all of it up your ass, and I'll fucking go home and look at the
Well, no, it's not that it shouldn't have been in the news, okay? But it certainly wasn't the number one story, I don't think.
He and Trump together at a rally today is not the number one story 12 hours removed from a historic convention and a historic convention speech. I'm sorry, but it's just not.
Was that the first story tonight? I'm trying to remember.
I'm sorry.
They built it up like a couple. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Although I was just saying, and they built it up a couple days before that too. They said he may, and then he does, and then he does. So there's 2 or 3 days worth of coverage, right?
Right. I mean, again, I'm not saying it wasn't a story. I'm saying it's not the lead story. The lead story on the 6:30 network nightly news for as long as I've been alive is supposed to be the number one story of the entire day, is it not?
Yeah.
It's the most important thing happening in the United States.
And we all know what the
most
most important story of the day was today is that Beyonce didn't show up last night.
I mean, I'd have felt better if they'd have led with that. And I'll be honest with you, there are probably more people in America who give a fuck about that than they do about our. I mean, I'm just saying, that's the truth.
Yep.
I mean, my wife talked for 2 days, non-fucking stop, about whether or not Taylor Swift was going to show up and make an appearance.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, she texted me at like 9:30. She's like, oh, somebody online says Taylor Swift's plane landed in Chicago. And I'm like, yeah, and if I were Taylor Swift, I would have sent it there for maintenance just to fuck with people like you. I mean, But I mean, I mean, that's what bothered me about, that story today. It was just like I said, it's not that it's not a story. There's an article about it in the Washington Post, 1,000 words long. That's fine, but it's not the top headline of the website when you go there, which
Yeah.
is how I think it should be represented. It's a story. It's not the story.
Yes, Bree. Bree is in Indonesia,
Okay, so
by the way.
I had to call in because, when it comes to news and what they choose, it depends on where you get your news. That's the important thing. So, and when something happens that is expected, they're not as concerned with it as when something happens that might be somewhat unexpected. So those are, so you can go through a whole list of, there are news values. That's number one. And then there are different researchers who have different ideas about this. If you look at Shoemaker and Reese, they've defined influences on media content. They essentially built that structure. Chomsky and Herman took from that a little bit with their filter model, but it's very easy to explain why an outlet does what they do. Very simple. It's actually not an art; it is a science, essentially.
Well, I mean, if I were doing the news, if I were in charge of that newscast, I would not have considered that the number one story. Okay, I would have considered it maybe number three. I can't remember what some of the other stuff was tonight, but it certainly wasn't number one. And I think we've heard pretty much enough about Donald Trump. And I just don't know if we want to hear more about Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, look, I agree. I'm not disputing anything, that how the media makes their decisions and Bree's, point on it and all. I mean, I'll concede all that. I'm just saying, if I were in the chair and I were rich and they wanted me to read that, I'd be like, no, I don't really think, I don't think it's not that bad.
That's at the individual level. That's one of the levels. And someone who has respect within the outlet, sometimes they can get things changed. But, if you're an intern, obviously you can't. So the individual is one level. It's actually the first level within the media outlet.
Yeah, but you have to understand something. You have to understand something about Lester Holt. Lester Holt is a whore, and that's what whores do. Okay? I mean, he's only out to keep his job and to get the most ratings he can get for the newscast. And I don't know, would you consider that? I mean, let's look at it from a purely programming standpoint. Would you consider that the kind of story you want to lead off with for your audience, hoping that's what will make them watch? Or was there other stuff? So, yes, Jeff.
I'd look to try to create another thought, and that is not that there was 20,000 people at that show last night.
Mm-hmm.
How many people were at home watching?
The ratings for this convention are higher than the ratings for the Republican convention.
Yeah, I heard today that it was just short of 27 million people that were watching at the time she gave her speech, which was about 7 million more than were watching Trump. So that's, 30.
That's a big thing.
I mean, it's like 30% more or whatever. So
well, there's your lead story right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but how many votes did Hillary Clinton get versus Trump? She got a lot more votes.
I don't know. We'd have to go back.
The areas she needed.
What?
But they didn't come in the states where she needed them.
Right.
So you see, yeah.
I don't know how many of you follow Nate Silver, but Nate Silver is a guy who used to, do the odds on football games and horse races and things like that. And he changed his being an odds maker to political elections. And he uses all the different polls and puts them together, and then has an algorithm that lets him figure out where the various people are standing. And it's interesting that in the case of this election right now, he has Kamala Harris winning it. By about 3%, something like that. But then again, he also says the more accurate figures are more accurate the closer we get to the election. Because people aren't really going to make up their minds totally until they get to the last couple of weeks.
In 2016, Nate Silver and his election model predicted that Hillary Clinton was going to win the U.S. presidential election.
Mm-hmm. And the reason, and why, and why did he say he was wrong? He said, I wasn't wrong. I was right when it came to the total vote. I was just wrong because I wasn't accounting for the Electoral College.
That's where you have to go. And it's Georgia.
Well, he's not making.
I keep saying Georgia.
No, it's not Georgia. It's going to be Pennsylvania. It's going to be Pennsylvania.
I'm from Pennsylvania. It won't be Pennsylvania.
Well, it's Pennsylvania because they've got many more electoral votes than.
I'm from Pennsylvania, and I'll tell you, Trump will win Pennsylvania. Thank you.
Trump, right now, according to Nate Silver, he's quite a bit behind in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's because when Nate Silver does his surveys, he's doing the city folk. The people on the countryside, they won't talk to him.
No, but he's not talking to people. He's taking actual other polls that exist and combines them and creates odds. Okay, so it's not the way you think, Bree. He totally is using a different model these days.
Didn't Obama win Pennsylvania twice?
I don't remember what he did. It's too long ago. I know it's supposed to be recent memory, but it's too long ago. I think Kamala has a good shot, and I think she has a good shot because she has a positive message, and people are sick of negativism in this country. They're sick of the kind of politics that's just been depressing the hell out of them, and this is not depressing them. What do you think, Josh?
I think that's the way a lot of people will look at it. I mean, but I definitely think they're working against, some of that negativism narrative that they have to overcome for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just before you guys came on the air, there's a roundtable on CNN with Abby Phillip, who's supposed to be so great again. And there's some guy on there that was from the 26 Trump campaign saying how he just thought it was atrocious that the very first night of the Democratic National Convention, there wasn't an American flag anywhere in the entire building. And then once they realized it, they had to go and suddenly scramble to buy a bunch of American flags. You mean like a couple 100,000? Like they just fucking drove down to the big lots and said, hey, you think we could have like 9 or 10 fucking truckloads of little American flags? Come on, man. That's so fake. That's so false.
And it's so jingoistic. And if you want American flags, they had enough of them in LED screens behind everybody and giant American flags. And
they got beat on the patriotism thing for the first time in years, and they're so sore about it. Well, there wasn't even a single American flag there the first night. Oh, really? Give me a fucking, CNN should just be like, how about we just time out right here? We'll go fucking roll some tape from Monday night, and if we see an American flag, your ass is out of here, and you're never coming back, and your fucking paycheck from CNN that you apparently need to
wait a minute.
You can fucking pick up your ass.
Hold on a second. Bree, when you're not talking, could you turn your microphone off? Because there's a lot of people talking in the background. Thanks. Yeah. So, I mean,
did you hear Buttigieg and
What were you going to say about Buttigieg?
Pennsylvania both times, 2008 and 2012.
Yeah, I believe so.
Democrat can win Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I think you won Ohio both times too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Hear Buttigieg being interviewed with his husband after?
No, I didn't see that.
It was really good. Yeah, he talked about, I think, what Josh, what you guys talked about before, about that they think that getting Trump out of there, he says obviously you can't say who, but there's a lot of Republicans who want this whole Trumpism out of their party so they can get back to normal.
Yeah, yeah. Which, you know what's interesting? I always, the last couple of nights, I have watched the proceedings on Fox so that I could be there when they immediately did the follow-up at the end of it, right? Mm-hmm. And I told you the other night that on, I think it was Wednesday night, when Waltz did his speech, they were waxing poetic about it. The whole panel was just saying how wonderful it was. This is over at Fox. And then last night, I'm watching it, and half the panel was saying how wonderful she was and how terrific she was and how refreshing she was and, you know, that she's going to be a hard person to beat, you know. And two of them felt, you know, had their usual, you know, right-wing asshole complaints. Okay, so now I'm listening, and they say, oh, on the line, on the phone, we have President Trump. So I'm going, okay, well, now you just spoiled the whole idea of having a panel. It was maybe 50-50. Here comes Trump. He's going, where was she when all these people were doing this and all these people were doing that? Well, to begin with, she was the vice president, and she couldn't do a goddamn thing, okay? That's for starters. She, you know, she couldn't write a thing that told them what to do with the borders and so on. In fact, she and Trump and Biden came up with a plan, presented it to the most conservative of Republicans. They agreed to it, and as they were about to pass it, in comes Trump and says to his Republican buddies, do not pass this. I need that issue, okay? And so they didn't. So whose fault was it? But anyway, he comes on immediately, starts going against it. So I turn it off. I go, I can't, you know. I'm over-Trumped by this time in my life. Mm-hmm. I wish I had stuck around. You know what happened? Fox cut him off.
Oh, beautiful.
Fox decided, they made a quick excuse. Oh, we got to go now, Mr. President, because he was just rambling. He was just in his normal, crazy ramble, and they just said, thank you so much, Mr. President. Goodbye, we got to go. And they hung up. They hung up on him.
So he hangs up from them, and he calls Newsmax, and he talks to them until they can't take it anymore, and they get rid of him. He called back into Fox after that and talked for longer.
Oh, really?
I don't know if you do that. Yeah, he when he got off the phone with them, 5 minutes later, he was on the air with Newsmax. So he speed dialed them, and they talked to him for a while, and then he called back into Fox. My understanding from it all today was completely uninvited and unwanted.
Well, isn't that interesting?
But, which I mean, he can call. It's his right. I'm just saying.
Well, these are his best bets for publicity, right? And they don't even want him anymore. They're tired of him. You know.
Well, I mean, when the horse stops plowing the field, making you money. Maybe they think it's coming to the end. I don't know.
You shoot the horse.
Right. I mean, if that's what you had the horse for, I mean, other than that, it's just a pet.
Yeah. Wow.
I don't know. I mean, it's just, the little details of it that sometimes the media lets go and things, I just don't, like I said, when someone wants to go on and CNN and talk about how, oh, it's so shameful, I didn't see any American flags the first night, and then some of us on our side started to point out how unpatriotic they were, and they had to scramble and run out and buy a bunch of flags before Tuesday night. And I'm like, come on, really?
Did they really do that?
I really think they just ran down to like the flag store and bought
for my
8 or 9
money,
truckloads of flags with someone's fucking American Express.
For my money, if you're holding a convention or you're holding a thing, yeah, you should have a flag there. One flag.
The whole room was full of them. I mean, it was.
I hate it when they put them all across the back. Flag, 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 flag. And I'm saying, I got to tell you, that flag wasn't created as decoration. And it certainly doesn't show how patriotic you are because you had 7 flags in back of you. I mean, one flag would be very nice. That makes the statement, We had LED flags all over the place on that set, okay? But I mean, come on, it doesn't prove anything. It's what we call jingoism. Show as many flags as possible. It's
Well, it's
jingoistic.
just it's so fake because, like I said, I live in the most Trump county in the United States. Seriously, I mean, I'll pull some numbers up and show you, and I can go stand out the bay window and look out the back door at the Little League baseball diamonds, where all those Trump lovers are there every weekend, and that American flag out there is beat all to hell, and no light shines on it at night, both of which bother me. It's like I want to go out there and take it down and retire it for them properly because they apparently don't have enough respect to do it, but they love America. I mean, but these are little stupid things that we're arguing over. That's what I'm saying. Why do they got to argue over something? Oh, there were no flags there the first night, but then, we pointed it out and they went and bought a bunch of them. Oh, yeah, okay. They must have bought every flag within, I don't know, 500 square fucking miles, apparently, because everyone in the whole
These
room
were just
had
the
two or three of them.
little flags for people to hold.
Yeah. I mean,
How many of
someone
those
had
do
to
you
have gotten
need?
poked in the ass sitting on one of them last night. There were so many of them. You can't tell me. I mean, it's the pettiness and the lies. So that was my point about what you were saying is people are they not getting sick and tired of this being the argument yet? Come on, get over yourself. I mean, really, that's what you want to argue about.
One flag is sufficient.
Yeah, more is fine.
I
but,
remember when one flag was sufficient.
Yeah, yeah, that's fine. I mean, one or a million, I'm fine with whatever. But I don't think that the number of them dictates how patriotic the party is, or how worthy they are of being elected, or how much you love America. I mean, I don't fly one at my home, and I have no disrespect. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't. If I started flying one tomorrow, am I entitled to, tax breaks or something because I'm more patriotic now? I don't know. I mean, it has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, yeah. Now, how many flags
Like I
do you
said,
have?
the same people that shake their head up and down at those comments are flying a flag that isn't sufficient. It can barely even hang itself on the pole anymore. It's been that way for 2 years.
Oh, listen, I used to
do
do my show from Live 105 in San Francisco, and there was a window, and the window looked out on I think it was maybe a paint company or something. Excuse that, Josh. But it was a paint company of some sort. I can't remember now. And they had this American flag up there, and I think they had some kind of slogan where they said something wonderful about America, And finally, I noticed this flag had been flying. They never took it down at night, which you're supposed to do, as you know, with the American flag.
Or put a light on it. Correct, you're right.
Or you can put a light on it and fly it at night. Okay.
Yeah,
all right, I didn't know
cool.
that. That's good to know. But they never took the thing down, and this flag was so tattered and falling apart and just blowing in the wind, and some shards of it would come flying off the flag if the gust was too heavy.
Yeah,
and I finally made a joke about that. I said, how patriotic is that? They don't even know how to handle an American flag. You got to take it down at night.
It bothers me a little bit when that stuff. I mean, I don't fly one here precisely because, if you do fly it at night, you should have a light on it and all that. And I don't, want the upkeep and all those things. I mean, there's some very nice things you can do. When you do that, I mean, your congressman can have a flag flown on top of one of the two sides of the Capitol building, and you can get in line and they will fly a flag, and they change it out every day over the House and the Senate chamber, and you can have that sent to your home and, put it up at your home if you're willing to wait a year or so, and they'll tell you the date that it flew over the Capitol building and all. I mean, there's nice
I didn't
things
know
like
that. See?
Yeah. I mean, so that's what I'm saying is, well, because of the party that I'm a member of, I'm not supposed to know about all that, though. You know what I mean? People. This is such a silly argument.
Let me ask you, Bree. Can you hear me, Bree? Can you hear me? Yeah. In Indonesia, are they that way about their flag, or are they just, hey, it's a symbol of our country and that's it?
Yeah. It's like anywhere. It depends on the person and the place. But I was just thinking, I was at an event the other day where they played the national anthem, and I couldn't even find a flag around me. But I took my hat off instinctively, but others didn't do that. So, it's my respect for their country even though it's not mine. I
Yeah,
still respect.
that's very good of you. It's very, very honorable of you. But still, I mean, this whole idea of you've got to stand up, you've got to put your hand over your heart, the whole. I mean, come on. This is all jingoistic. Act like an American. Have American values. Have the values of goodness to your neighbors and all the things that, for instance, Kamala was talking about last night. That's being an American, not a flag or, your hand over your heart or anything else. What are you going to say, Bree?
Well, that's exactly right, Alex. When they were talking about that, I was thinking about the fact that I've had to move, twice while I've been here, simply because I didn't have good neighbors. And now, even where I live, I'm saying the neighbors will do things and they just don't think about other people. And I think a lot of that has to do, so when Tim Walz was talking about that issue, I was like, yeah, I don't get that sense around here. It's definitely a different culture. For example, it was common here. You could go past let's say you go past a house and it says for rent and it has a number. And below the number, it might say Chinese only, or it might say Malays only, or no Indian. So that's, they would not bat an eyelid about that here. They would not think that that's discriminatory in any way. They just think that's what these people want. That's what they get.
Okay. I don't know that that's being particularly racist. It's just that, I don't know. If you did it here, if you did it here, you'd get killed for it.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, that's interesting. It's interesting. Let me see. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Jeff.
I talked to a young guy yesterday, and I said to him, I said, 4 years ago, did you vote? And he goes, no. and I looked at him on that one. And I didn't ask him with any questions, okay? But I said to him, are you thinking about doing it this year? And he goes, yes. And he tells me, without even asking him, he says to me, well, the first time I didn't like either one. Is what he said.
Yeah.
And he says, but this year I think I got somebody I want to vote for. And I said, good luck. I didn't ask him what his question was, who he's going to vote for. But I think we all know who he's going to go.
Not for Trump.
Right, of course, because he actually said no for Trump before.
Yeah, right. He said I didn't like either of them, and now I'll vote. Well, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to do a little assessment of.
Well, I can't. Usually when I look at candidates, I will look at the negatives of a candidate, okay, and why they would not be appealing to a massive audience or whatever, okay. In Kamala's case, I see a woman there that I don't think there are very many people who could be could find her objectionable.
Objectionable.
Yeah, they could find her objectionable. Because
this is pretty nice that I'm telling you how to talk.
Yeah, right. She has there's not a lot to dislike about her. She's a rather pleasant human being. I mean, all things considered, for a politician, she's very pleasant. And you don't find that often. So I think that likability factor is going to go a great long way towards getting her elected. And then you add to that Walz, who could almost give you diabetes watching him. I mean, he's good and sweet and wonderful, I'm just waiting for something horrible to come out about him,
I don't see I didn't really see any of it, but my wife mentioned it, and I heard a little bit. Now I see something I pulled up on my phone. But like, were there a lot of people making fun of his son? Apparently, I mean,
Yes,
And
online. But you know
so
Memes.
what's the deal with that? I mean, I
well,
don't
I'll tell you what the deal
understand.
is. Anything like that happens, there's going to be negative stuff online now. That's what online has become.
Well, yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, but
You know, I found it a moment in which I was almost brought to tears by watching this kid. You know, and then he's
like,
up there, he's crying, and he's mouthing, "That's my dad up there."
right.
You know,
Yeah,
and
and then I heard about all this,
No, he's like Jim Boehner. You know, he's got the Jim Boehner blood.
yes,
yeah, I
right.
mean,
The kid is,
I heard about, and then they were saying about, well, some things about like his mental, and I'm like, but I don't even care. Like, who cares if he has that and that's what makes him outwardly emotional? Even if he's perfectly normal, whatever normal is, and you wanted to,
that's a kid whose father is standing up there to an audience of what 75,000. How many people were in that place? 50,000 people.
I think it was more than that. That arena holds more, and they filled the floor. So I mean, yeah, I don't know, but I mean,
all cheering him.
Yeah,
Okay,
I've seen, yeah.
if that were my father, I'd be crying too.
Yeah, but I mean, I've literally seen people act more emotional than that for some boy band or whatever. I mean, like, who cares? It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. I mean, why would you make fun of him for that or whatever? I mean, like I just read this article, the headline about Ann Coulter saying something about him on her Twitter feed or whatever. I mean, like, why? Again, why are you
Well,
talking
whatever
about
happened? I
this?
don't know how old this kid
Stop.
is, but whatever happened to that old mobster
17?
rule that you don't go after family?
Well, yeah,
You
I
know?
mean, I think they said he was 17, but
yeah,
I mean,
he's 15.
so like, but I just don't understand, like, what part of watching that makes a person, Ann Coulter or anybody else, want to go onto the internet and act like that was bad? Like, I mean, are you guys really that gobsmacked that you're starting to get your ass kicked, that now this is what you're worried about? You know what I mean? Like, you can't focus now. So clearly it hasn't bothered, because the only thing they can find is the number of American flags that may or may have not been present on the first night, and some 17-year-old kid jumping up and down being excited.
Are you ready for
Okay.
this? This was on Fox News the other night. Tim Walz, okay, is perhaps a secret agent or
Oh, yeah.
sleeper agent
Right.
of communist China,
Okay.
because he's been there 30 times. He happened to like China a lot. In fact, so much he was teaching there for a while. You know, he and his wife were married in China, and quite frankly, if it weren't that we are in a bad way with China right now, I would love to go back there and spend like, a half a year. It's a wonderful country. It's a beautiful country.
Yeah.
And by the way, the people are pretty terrific, So, why all of a sudden is he a sleeper agent because he went to China a lot?
Well, like I said, because they're starting to get their ass kicked, and I mean, it's no different. A lot of these guys here watch football, and all. It's no different than like you're really supposed to beat this team, and you're there at the game on Sunday, and suddenly it's like I cannot believe that we're not beating these fuckers. All we've talked about all week is how we were going to win, and they're terrible, and we're so much better. And I mean, it's just like you just can't handle it. So then you start acting like an idiot. I mean, that's what's happening.
Well, what's
They're
happened?
starting to lose, and they can't understand it, so they're acting like idiots.
What's happened that's made things? It's the seed change that's happened. That a month and a half ago, Donald Trump was running against Biden, who, quite frankly, it looked like he could beat, and they felt he could beat him. And then all of a sudden, they changed the rules. They changed the players. And Trump didn't know how to handle that, and now he's up against all of a sudden, his numbers are going down, and people aren't paying as much attention to him as they paid attention to him, even though Lester Holt obviously does.
Right.
You know, I mean,
Well, and it's not just that. I mean, look, they were picking out their furniture. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
mhm,
how
mhm.
they were going to decorate in the White House, and he's got his Heritage Foundation homeboys who he apparently he's never heard of before. They're making their plan. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, you know, they done booked their Super Bowl hotel
Didn't
rooms,
he have
and
to vet? Didn't
they
he
might
have
not
to?
go.
Didn't he have to vet the Supreme Court nominees when he was president through the Heritage Foundation?
Well, they provided, yeah, I mean, they guided him along. I mean, they've always tried to influence Republican presidents for that. And the American Constitutional Society, the ACS, has done the same thing with Democratic presidents and all that. I have no problem with them lobbying,
Hmm.
as an organization because that's legal and, fine here in America. But, you know, uh, uh, but as I've said for a long time and we've talked about, he thinks he's using these people, and I think we all know they're using him.
Hmm.
And as soon as
Well,
he is not
that's the case.
useful to
But
him,
that's the
them
case.
anymore,
That's the case
they're done.
with everybody else. I mean,
Yeah,
you think he's using Putin? No, Putin's using
right.
him.
Correct.
You think that North Korea is using him? No, he's using them, or rather, he's using them. No, they're using him. I mean, all you got to do is flatter this guy, and he'll suck your dick. You know. Well, there
Yeah, I
goes my
mean that's
monetization for tonight. But
well, I ruined that a long time. But I mean, they they're using him and have been for a long time, and that's what I'm saying is a lot of these folks, their ticket back to a great administration job and being an important person and an office in the West Wing and all, I mean, starting to slip away a little bit, or at the very least, they're starting to have to fight for it, and they're not handling it very well, including him.
hey,
That's what I see.
yeah. Let me ask our good friend Bree. You aren't using your phone to do this with, or do you have two phones?
This is a tablet that I'm viewing and interacting with you, and then I have my phone where I interact with all my friends from the region.
Yeah, well, don't do
I
it
haven't
right
done so.
don't do it right in front of the
Sorry.
screen because all we're
Sorry,
getting
sorry.
is. But I was wondering
Yeah.
what you were using. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I want to get a flip phone. I'm looking at the Honor V2 or V3
Mhm.
right now. But the thing is I like having, because I want to have a phone and then go to a tablet if I'm watching. But I like to have two because they both have separate SIMs, and I can do this. I can communicate with people on one, and then do something else on the other. So normally I'd be watching replays
Yeah.
of the Steelers or the Pirates, but since you're on.
Anyway, so Brian, what do you think?
Yes.
You think she's going to win? You're hoping, I guess, that she does. But
I I heard her speech, and I've heard a couple of her other speeches, but I think her speech last night was a lot different. Her energy and how she spoke and stuff like that. I think it was a lot different than the other ones, even these last ones with Walls. I think she seemed like a lot different, like very serious.
you like her, don't you? She has a high likability quotient.
Right. It was always, like I said before, it was always, you have Trump, and then you had Biden, and it was like painful to watch him speak, to see him run everything, and then to see her, it's like, wow, it's like now there's this breath of fresh air, and I think she's on the right path. And,
Yeah.
When she started, though, it was a little rough because everybody was clapping so much. And I was hoping that somebody backstage remind her of the Howard Dean moment. And just don't pull a Howard Dean, because I thought that was coming.
Well, you see, you won't get that. You won't get a Howard Dean moment because there are microphones miking the audience on the TV show, and the trouble with him was nobody could hear the audience. So when he was cheering, they maybe were cheering back, but you couldn't hear it. And there's
Yeah.
nothing like I learned a long time ago when we were doing shows. We had comedians get up and do their act, and then I listened to it back, and I go, that doesn't sound right. They don't sound as funny as they were. And I finally realized it was because you couldn't hear the audience laughing. So I then told my guys to put a microphone on the audience and crank that up so it's equal with the audio from the comedian. And all of a sudden, every comedian who went on that show killed. You know.
Yep.
So
Well,
it's
the best speech of all, we didn't talk about, Alex, AOC. I mean, I can just watch that on repeat. You know, she was the best.
She was really good.
By far.
I didn't see her.
Better than Michelle Obama. Better than anybody, in my opinion. She had the passion. She really had.
Well, I do think Michelle Obama was pretty amazing. You know, I agreed with her when, you know, Brock got up and said, Michelle's a hard act to follow. You know, I would not want to follow that act. She was terrific. And
Yeah, she was better than one.
you know, I mean, I think everybody was great except the one I couldn't stand. Who do you think I couldn't stand?
Clint?
Oprah.
I didn't watch it.
You know, I mean, when she got Kamala Harris. Now, come on, Oprah. We've had enough of that crap. The only other thing you could have done that would have been bigger than that was to get out there and point at the audience and go, "You get a vote, and you get a vote, and you get a vote." I mean, she was pathetic, and people
We're not going back.
I didn't have to listen to him.
yeah, you know. But I think so far everything that for somebody who had to do it at the last minute that Kamala's been doing has been exceptional. I mean, she's hit all the right notes, and you know, the for them to get that convention together in a matter of a month and turn it around from being a Biden convention to a Kamala Harris convention. Just and having to change the tone of the whole thing and the speakers who were going to get up there, I think it was an amazing job they did. You know?
It's almost like something that you would have to do if you were the vice president and you suddenly became president. You know?
Yeah,
It's a little bit like that. You would have to deal with something unexpected, and could you handle it or not?
well,
So I see what's happened as a positive sign in that regard.
they've handled it very nicely, I think. You know, I was amazed.
Yeah, if you don't agree with their policy or whatever, fair enough, you know. But I mean, you can't deny that they've been successful at their current messaging for the last, several weeks.
By comparison, the Republican convention was almost kind of uninspiring. You know, there was no excitement there.
Yeah, I did see some stuff today on
And
that. Where,
she gave a 37-minute speech. His was 2 hours.
Yeah.
yeah,
They kind of had the anti-Republican convention, which is pretty terrific. But anyway, hey, I'm glad you guys got to see it last night, and that's the reason I didn't do a show last night. But I really enjoyed having you here tonight. And there's the theme. I'm sure you can hear it. I really, I'm glad you were here tonight, and we were able to talk about this. Yeah, right. The two-hand jerk off. Yeah, right. Exactly.
Trump.
Well, I want to thank Josh for being here. Jeffrey, thank you very much for having joined us. Brian, good having you here. Bree, wonderful having you here from all the way from Indonesia. And Charlie Wallace, always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Everybody, give a big wave goodbye, and I'll give a big wave goodbye at you. There they go, folks. That's it. I'll see you all again on Monday. We'll be here on Facebook doing the pop-up show, and then we'll be back again right here next week on Wednesday, same time, same station in life. And in the meantime, as always, if you see her, tell her I love her, okay? Night, everybody. Have a nice weekend. I'm just playing the theme rather long tonight because I got off somewhat early. Again, have a nice weekend, everybody.